Hey, what is up, everybody?
And welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast. I'm your host, Kendall.
I'm your host, Josh.
And we are joined by our production team, Janelle and Ian.
What's up?
Hi, guys.
But before we get into the case, we do have an exciting announcement, something that you guys have been asking for, and we have been trying to do. We do listen to you guys. Things take time, okay? We have finally re-merged all of our merch stores. So all of the shows, the merch that we sell, is all available in one place. That means one shipping cost. And again, we don't set the price of shipping. So I know people sometimes complain when you're buying from another country. And unfortunately, we have no control over shipping prices. But, you know, it'll be a lot easier for you to pick up a shirt from here and pick up a shirt from this show and then not have to do multiple shipping charges. I know that's been an issue and it has been on our minds to get that fixed for a while. But the really exciting part about it is we have made the decision to make 100% of all profit from merch go directly to supporting our foundation, the Higher Hope Foundation. So yeah, 100% of your purchase from any of the shows, any piece of merch on our website directly supports our nonprofit. So please consider taking a look around. We have some new stuff coming out eventually. All these things take so much time, but yeah, thanks in advance to anyone who wants to support our foundation. I can promise you that every single dollar is put to good use. You can actually see exactly, we're very transparent about our foundation. You can go to our website, higherhope.org, and see our full impact report from last year, which explains how every single dollar was spent and where it all came from. And we've been able to do a lot since we launched Higher Hope in September. And a lot of that is thanks to you guys. Even just supporting our shows by watching them, listening to them, allows us to be able to do this. And we're very, very grateful. And it's just always been a dream of ours to have a foundation and to see how quickly it's developed and how many people we've been able to help thanks to all of you in such a short amount of time. It truly means a lot. So
yeah, that's milehighermerch.com.
Yes, I should have given the website.
And any of the other links to the previous stores will redirect you to milehighermerch.com. So everything can be found there. There's still actually quite a bit of stuff on there from some past collections, and some of your favorite items are still available on there. So check it out.
Take a look-see, because Mother's Day's coming up, Father's Day's coming up. It's a good time to do some shopping. Just saying. Guys, today we're going over a case that I am just going to say right out. It is extremely frustrating. It's also very, very upsetting because we're talking about a 37-year-old mother of 3 who died well, I guess we don't know exactly what happened, but it's very mysterious circumstances here. And also 2 of her daughters were murdered. And no one really knows what happened, although we have a lot of personal opinions and theories ourselves, and law enforcement has just been terrible on this one. So there's a lot to go over, but it is a tough one to get through. I just wanted to give people a warning.
Yeah, a lot more questions than answers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think the more you dig into it, the more this theory sort of starts to make sense. And I think a lot of people will lean one way, but then there's just a serious lack of information, because it seems like this case would be somewhat clear cut if the evidence was investigated properly and if the police were being transparent about the crime scene. And it doesn't seem like that's happened at all. And rightfully so, the family of the victims here are extremely upset with law enforcement, so much so that they've reached out to the Attorney General. They're trying to get the case moved over to the Texas Rangers because this takes place in Bexar County down in South Texas, so San Antonio area. And man, it's been since 2019, so we're now 2025. Yeah. So it's been a number of years and literally no developments. Yet they still say they're investigating it and the case isn't officially closed. So it's really hard to even understand what's going on here.
Yeah, and what's also really weird is there's been very minimal coverage on this case, which was actually really surprising to me, given how long it's been and how much of a mysterious element there is to it. I would think documentary, production companies would have picked it up, but there's really nothing like that out there. There's some creators that have covered it, and then some quick, smaller productions that are not
local news,
widespread at all. News. So, and their family family and friends have expressed that they're really looking for more coverage to keep this case alive and hopefully put more pressure on law enforcement.
The trust has been broken.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sheriff Salazar, who will be featured a lot in this episode, Just makes your skin crawl, honestly. He's just such a car salesman, like law enforcement official. It seems like he says a lot of things and a lot of things that he probably shouldn't say, and then he doesn't back up anything with actions.
Yeah.
And it's extremely frustrating, as you'll find out here.
Yeah.
And there's also a wealthy boyfriend involved who has been completely quiet because this entire crime happens at his house, and he's been completely silent since this has happened. He hasn't talked to the family or anything like that. So it's all very sketchy. There's a lot of weirdness to this one.
I think this is going to be one of those cases where the majority of you are going to fall right where we fall, where we really have narrowed it down to one of two scenarios. I don't know, maybe people have some other theories, but to me, once you know everything, it seems pretty obvious. And we are going to be spending a lot of time in the beginning of the episode going over the background of everyone involved to some degree, because I think it's really important you understand who these people are, where they came from, and the relationship dynamics that, had developed before this actually took place. And we're going to be talking about the murder of Nichol Olsen, as well as her two beautiful daughters, Alexa and London. Alexa was only 16 and London was only 10. So again, it's just very, very upsetting, very brutal. So you've been warned. Nichol Olsen was born on May 27th, 1981 to Rick Carl Olsen and Mick Cheryl Denise Olsen. She grew up in San Antonio, Texas, the same city where she would go on to spend most of her life. And not much is known actually about Nichole's early life. We do know that her father worked for the H.B. Zachary Company and was the family breadwinner, though it was still hard to make ends meet. So around 1988, the family welcomed their second child, Justin Olsen. However, this is also when the family would experience serious tragedy. Rick had really been the family's anchor point and was not only relied on to support the four of them financially, but he also became the family's emotional support. Later on in Nichole's life, social workers would remark that Nichol was, quote, a daddy's girl whose memories revolve around her dad, not her mom. However, unfortunately, Rick was a addict, and while he did or could keep his drug use away from his family, it still ended up catching up with him. And on December 23rd, 1988, Rick Olsen died of an overdose when Nichol was only 7 years old. And so as you probably noticed, Rick's death came only 2 days before Christmas, and it absolutely devastated their family who had really built their lives around him. And according to the same social worker from the report, Nichol described her mom as, quote, a functional alcoholic who drank to try and stop the pain she felt from Rick's passing. Mick Cheryl never remarried, and even as a young kid, Nichol had to take up more responsibilities around the house, including providing childcare for her younger brother, Justin.
In 1996, when Nichol was just 15, she gave birth to her first child, Skylar Nobles. She dropped out of high school in her junior year, likely to devote more time to caring for Skylar. However, Nichol would go on and get her GED later on in life. In 1998, Nichol married Skylar's father, James W. Nobles, when she was still 16 years old. However, the couple divorced a year later and retained joint custody of Skylar throughout the years. However, on December 26, 2001, Nichole's mom, Mick Cheryl, died unexpectedly of a previously unknown heart disease. Nichol, who was 20 at the time, now had to take care of her son Skylar, who was only 5, and her younger brother Justin, who is now only 13 years old. You also notice that both of Nichole's parents passed away around Christmas time. A lot of people online, people that theorize, have, come out and speculated that this may have made this time frame, Christmas through New Year, an emotionally turbulent time for Nichol. Family members have never echoed this sentiment, and this is only according to people who had never met Nichol or her family. So take that with a grain of salt. Nichole's friend, Ronnie Garza, who lived with Nichol later on, said, quote, she didn't have it the easiest. She was a survivor. She picked herself up. She dusted herself off, and she kept going no matter what life threw at her.
After Nichol divorced her first husband, she worked a series of low-paying and odd jobs to support her son Skylar and also her little brother Justin, as well as pay child support to Skylar's father. One of the places she worked was called Las Palapas, which is a Mexican chain throughout San Antonio. However, part of her wages were withheld to fulfill child support payments between 2000 and 2001. Skylar's father claimed that Nichol failed to make nearly $24,000 in child support payments throughout the years. However, this has not been confirmed, nor is it known how the matter was eventually resolved. So in 2001, Nichol remarried Carlos Montez Jr. He was a U.S. Marine. And shortly after being restationed to Hawaii, the couple gave birth to Nichols' second child and first daughter, Alexa Denise Montez, in 2002. However, for unknown reasons, their marriage did not last, and the couple divorced in 2006. After this, Nichol returned to San Antonio with Alexa, and she and Carlos would amicably share custody when he eventually returned to Texas as well. Upon returning to San Antonio, Nichol seemed to find her footing professionally. She attended and graduated from cosmetology school before making a secure living working at several hair salons throughout the years. And the most prominent of these was Salons by JC on East Sonterra Boulevard in San Antonio, and this was a job that she actually kept for nearly a decade.
Also around 2006, Nichol met Hector Bribiescas, who worked at his father's 18-wheeler dealership, and the two became engaged and gave birth to Nichols' youngest child, London Bribiescas, in 2008. However, shortly after London's birth, the couple broke up before they could get married. And even though Nichol had no legal obligation to share custody with Hector, she thought it would be good for London to spend half of her time with her father. Hector described Nichol as outgoing when she was in the mood, but standoffish if she wasn't interested in people or the conversations, and she never faked like she was.
I honestly really like that about her. I think that's very relatable.
Well, and I think it's also really cool because other people would say that she was still outgoing and social and friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that she wouldn't fake shit. You know? She was still a nice person. She just wasn't fake.
We need more people like that.
I agree.
I am so sick of people being fake. And it's like, if you can't handle the truth, then grow up.
Mm-hmm. I also find I can be very fake. I find it really hard to seem interested when people are talking about things I'm not interested in, and I kind of catch myself glazing over and just tuning out. But I'll do my best to just oh yeah, oh very cool, and I wish I had more of the real energy. I truly appreciate people who are just unapologetically themselves and not putting on the front for people, which I guess some people would see as a negative quality, but I think it's kind of cool.
Hector also said that they could clash heads, and this happened during their romantic relationship from time to time. But he also said, quote, "Our relationship as friends got much better after the separation. The two would routinely communicate with one another to make arrangements for London. He never reported that he had any problems with Nichol after their breakup. As Nichols' professional life improved, so did her role as a mother. In 2009, a social worker reported on Nichol as a mother to decide custody of Skylar, who was 12 at the time, and the report concluded that the parents should have joint custody of the children. Still, it noted that Nichol provided a more stable living situation, which was a stark difference from social work reports from 2000 and 2001. According to this 2009 report, the social worker wrote, quote, "During interviews with Nichol, she admitted that she was not a very good mother to Skylar when he was young because she was young and immature herself. Nichol said she is now a good mother and that the children are all she has in the world and that she cannot imagine not having them in her life."
One of Nichols' cousins, Vanessa Russell, said that by age 25, Nichol had really risen above her earlier, tougher childhood and was actively providing a better life for her kids than she had. And Vanessa said that Nichol was, quote, "the epitome of class, grace, elegance, beauty, and love." She was working overtime at the hair salon, and she would sometimes even double or triple book clients and then just, work as quickly as she could through them to get off by 2:30 and then go pick up her children from school on time. However, while her professional life and duties as a mother were thriving, Nichol still had relationship issues. In 2014, while living with an unnamed 39-year-old boyfriend, Nichol was arrested on suspicion of misdemeanor assault. According to Nichol, she had been out that night with friends, and she called her boyfriend to ask for a ride as she was too intoxicated to drive herself. However, despite repeated calls to the boyfriend, he never picked up. And when she arrived home, she saw her boyfriend sitting on the couch and began asking him why he didn't pick up the phone. Then, while looking at the phone, Nichol saw that he had been talking to another woman who is also unnamed. And according to Nichol, she struck him with an open hand across the face. And she later told the responding officers, quote, "Yes, I admit I did hit him first." And officers even noted that while Nichol was intoxicated, she was still polite and composed during the interview. And in response to the strike, Nichol's boyfriend had took her to the ground because, quote, "she was hitting me." Nichol said that he, quote, "dragged me out of the house." And according to the incident report, the boyfriend had a bruise on his left eye and an abrasion on his knee.
And while Nichol was arrested and booked on suspicion of misdemeanor assault, the charge was dismissed a year later after the boyfriend refused to show up to court and did not cooperate with the police throughout the incident. It is assumed that the couple broke up immediately after this all happened. After this altercation, Nichol seems to have been in at least one other short-term relationship before the summer of 2016. Nichol and her friends Vanessa Turney and Kelly Myrick had founded a watch and jewelry company named Kiva Cole and actively posted their products on social media, mainly with Nichol as the model. After one post in 2016, an entrepreneur named Charlie Wheeler, who was located in the San Antonio area, slid into Nichol's DMs on Instagram and expressed interest in seeing her romantically. Before we get into their romance, it's important we discuss how different Mr. Charlie Wheeler's upbringing was from Nichol's. Life is busy, and one of the things that I do on a weekly basis is cook meals for my family, and meal kits have been a game changer in that regard, but man, some of those meal kits advertise a quick meal and it ends up taking twice as long as expected. Then you got a bunch of cleanup and dishes. But that all changed when I started getting Hungry Root. And now we're paying customers of Hungry Root because we love it that much. Hungry Root is really changed the game because their meals are so easy to make. I mean, we're talking 3 to 5 steps. Oftentimes I can get a Hungry Root meal on the table in 5 to 10 minutes and there's virtually no cleanup. There's like one pan, maybe 2, and it's just so simple. Hungry Root makes it really easy to eat high quality, nutritious food and achieve any diet or health goals by tailoring recipes to a variety of lifestyles, from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free or dairy-free, high protein and more. I love the customization that they give you. So if there's a recipe that, say, has onions in it or some other ingredient that you don't like, you can actually just remove that from it. You can also add proteins to it, pretty much whatever you want to it, and really truly customize it. It comes in a box on your door. You do everything through their app, which is super simple. And tonight, actually, I'm making the salmon and zucchini soy garlic noodles. And it is one of my favorite recipes. It's got these Asian noodles. It's got delicious salmon, which is really high quality. Some of the meal kit salmons I've had over the years have been kind of fishy, and you're like, I don't know what the quality is here. But honestly, one of the things that impresses me about Hungry Root is the quality of their produce, and their proteins are top notch. So it's safe to say I love Hungry Root, and you can take advantage of this exclusive offer for a limited time. Get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/milehigher and use code milehigher. That's hungryroot.com/milehigher. Code milehigher to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/milehigher. Use code milehigher. Well, Mr. Charlie Wheeler, he was born in 1986 and raised in the rural area of Fredericksburg, Texas, which where even is that? Where his parents Cynthia and Forrest owned a prominent ranch. According to journalist Peggy O'Hare of the San Antonio Express, Charlie's home, quote, embrace God, horses, and ranching. Sounds like a country song. And as of 2019, his parents had been married for 35 years. Forrest and Cynthia had long been active in rodeo events. Forrest was a team roper and Cynthia was a talented horse trainer and barrel racer. Charlie spent much of his life going to rodeos, riding horses, and learning how to rope from his parents.
However, the rodeo wasn't the only business that his parents were involved in. According to Shale Magazine, an oil and gas trade publication, the Wheelers had been one of the leading South Texas families for generations. And the massive family ranch had long been used for oil leases with some of the largest oil companies in the world, including BHP and Comstock. The family's passions were rodeo and ranching, and also the family business was oil and gas, of course. And that's why it was no surprise that Charlie went down both paths in his lifetime. His family had really made a name for themselves in the rodeo circuit and became extremely wealthy through the oil business. So really a prominent family in the area overall. Charlie attended Fredericksburg High School through his sophomore year, but was homeschooled by his mother for the following 2 years. And he attended Schreiner University in Kerrville, Texas, but actually dropped out after less than a year. After this, Charlie returned home and he followed in his parents' footsteps by becoming a professional team roper, just like his father. And from 18 years old, Charlie would make a name for himself in the Texas rodeo scene, receiving a decent amount of cash from his various rodeo winnings. And after 3 years in the rodeo, Charlie was looking for a new direction for his life. He returned to his family's ranch and began helping his father manage the livestock, lead hunting trips, and tend to the wildlife. And according to Shale magazine, returning home helped Charlie realize that he needed to create his own business, really make a name for himself. So at the age of 21, Charlie used his several rodeo winnings to start a security gate guard company called OTG, or On the Go, that served the Eagle Shale area in South Texas.
Charlie ran OTG for 3 years until he sold his business at the age of 24. However, he was allowed to keep the name for any future business endeavors. In either 2011 or 2012, he and a man named Rob Rogers started OTG Services using contacts in the oil industry Charlie had gotten through his father. Now, OTG provided safety restraints, roustabouts, plant maintenance, equipment hauling, and other services to oil companies across South Texas. He called it the one-stop oilfield shop. By 2014, OTG's daily sales reached their height of $130,000 and had 140 employees. I mean, for a daily sales amount, that's good money right there. Daily?
Yeah.
Whew. In the Shale magazine article published in the same year, Charlie said, quote, "It's a matter of not looking back and moving forward." He's saying he wanted to double his daily sales. However, OTG ceased operations in 2016 when oil prices across Texas bottomed out. And from that point forward, Charlie worked with his dad on the ranch and helped with various oil and gas companies that leased land from them. Charlie said, quote, "My dad always taught me to do the right thing," and said that Forrest had created a great foundation for their family. However, Charlie wasn't just well known for his business endeavors. As a young man, he had numerous run-ins with law enforcement and charges on his record, almost all having to do with the consumption of alcohol.
On October 12th, 2008, 21-year-old Charlie was arrested for public intoxication at a country and western nightclub near Angleton during a county fair. Charlie was still working the rodeo and was arrested wearing a cowboy hat, of course, a white metal necklace, pink western shirt, blue jeans, blue boots, and spurs. He pled guilty and was fined $300. A year later, Charlie was once again arrested in his hometown of Fredericksburg for driving while intoxicated. An officer saw Charlie driving a 2008 Chevy Silverado erratically in the parking lot around 2:20 a.m. on December 27th, 2009. The officer approached Charlie's vehicle and shined a flashlight at his window, and Charlie flipped off the cop and just drove away. So obviously the cop chased him, but not how you would think. He actually sprinted after him on foot until he eventually just pulled over. Fast officer, I guess. The officer noted that Charlie's eyes were bloodshot and he smelled strongly of alcohol, and he refused to take a breathalyzer test and failed multiple field sobriety tests. When the officer asked him to count backwards from 31 to 10, which is kind of random, but anyway, he counted all the way down to 0 instead, and he told the officer that he failed the test deliberately to, quote, "prove a point." Does anyone understand what the point he was trying to make could possibly have been?
That he was drunk.
I was going to say maybe he was like, not only, I'll one up you. Not only can I count down to 10, I can count down to 0, bitch.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah,
That was
that's-
probably the point.
Yeah.
That makes a little more sense. Great
try to-
point,
He's like,
dude.
I'm really good at counting.
Yeah. However, despite this insane interaction between Charlie and this officer, all charges were dropped for unknown reasons, which really makes you think. Another incident on April 13th, 2013 involved Charlie and his then girlfriend at a hotel bar. And it's a situation that would repeat itself with Nichol actually years later. Charlie had been cut off after he became loud and started to cause problems, very on par for him. And his girlfriend bought a beverage and Charlie began to drink it. And the servers noticed him and kicked him out of the bar. And when he made a scene, because of course he did, Charlie was kicked out of the hotel and arrested at the hotel as well. He spent the night in a detox facility and no charges were filed once again.
And Charlie wasn't just dangerous behind the wheel when he had been drinking. Between 2015 and 2016, Charlie was cited for speeding 4 times. Once when he was driving a 2015 Maserati Gran Turismo, Charlie was clocked going 74 miles per hour in a 45 zone. An officer involved in the 2016 stop with Charlie described him as, quote, "a habitual speed violator." So try to keep this all in mind when Charlie and Nichol began their relationship in the summer of 2016 after he had DM'd her on Instagram.
And I think all of these incidents really says so much about his character, not only the fact that he pretty much got away with them for the most part, but just the fact that he clearly thinks he is above the law and that he is someone who can just do anything he wants and potentially get away with it.
Well, he's thus far pretty much proven that's
Right.
correct.
So he's like, well, I can't. Everything's alleged. So everything with Charlie going forward, as we're speaking, obviously we do have to say, he's innocent
never
until
been charged with a
proven
crime,
guilty in a court of law.
has never even been named a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So back to the Instagram DMs. Charlie's messaging Nichol. He's expressing interest in her. She invited him to meet her at the La Cantera Resort, where she and Vanessa Turney had a meeting for their jewelry business. Vanessa said this of their first interaction with Charlie. Quote, "He definitely chased her down. He made it very clear that he was very interested in her." The relationship took off quickly after this first date. Soon, Charlie and Nichol were featured in a promo video for Kiva Cole. And while the video has since been taken down, the San Antonio Express said, quote, "Nichol and Charlie looked every bit the giddy couple, cuddling and smiling while gazing into each other's eyes."
But I think you do have to keep in mind, this was very early on in the relationship, and they're
It's a
selling
promo
jewelry.
shoot, yeah.
Like, you want to
Right.
look like you're happy and in love, considering oftentimes jewelry is given to a love interest and stuff. So I think they were playing it up to some degree. But I don't know.
Kiss with K.
That's right. Every kiss begins
That's
with
their
K.
whole marketing
Mhm.
campaign.
I do think also like it's important to point out, like you said, this was very early on, and from all accounts, like the early days of their relationship, it did go so quickly because it was so good, really, in
Yeah.
the very beginning.
As far as we know and people around them knew. Yeah.
Honeymoon phase,
Yep.
exactly.
But after a year of dating in April 2017, Charlie purchased $1 million estate in the upscale neighborhood of Anaqua Springs. The house, which was 4,500 square feet and had 5 bedrooms, was on a nearly 3-acre lot. It also had 4.5 bathrooms, a wine cellar, a swimming pool, and a hot tub.
Is this
So
on
very nice.
Zillow? Is there
Yes.
any way we can flip through some of the? It'd be kind of interesting. This house is like stunning.
very
It looks like a
nice.
resort. The way it's all laid out around the pool with the hot tub, and there's like waterfalls with rocks, lighting.
I mean, the neighborhood in itself is just really nice.
Mhm.
It's a gated neighborhood. It does have 24-hour security. It has like a little sort of gatehouse you have to drive through, probably check in or enter a code in order to enter the neighborhood. And again, they're on 1+ acre lots. So, got some space around you. Really nice.
Lots of privacy. Yeah, let's look through some of these.
These were taken in 2019, I believe is what it just said.
You can skip through that because this one will look far.
So yeah, this was when the house went up for sale after all this.
Whoa.
unfolds.
Is that part of the pool or is that like a pond in the front?
That's the pool.
That's the pool, so they
That's
could
the-
light it up green too.
The jacuzzi and then the pool, yeah. Very nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like
Seriously, it looks like a hotel.
It's kind of like a
Spanish?
Tuscan villa
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, he was making, his business was doing $160,000 a day at one point. So you do the math on that. I mean, definitely a multi-million-dollar business, which who knows how much he lost when oil bottomed out. But I'm assuming he definitely had some cash, a millionaire, if I had to guess.
Well, and
And-
his parents stayed rich as fuck too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, really nice place. Okay, so here's the primary bedroom.
It's cool.
Oh, it's really pretty. Got a fireplace in there.
Oh, it leads right out to the pool.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of the rooms led out to the pool. Look at
Wow.
that shower.
That's
Oh
a
my God.
bathtub.
Well, it's like a bathtub. That's a style that people do where they put the bathtub actually in the shower.
No, I don't think there's a shower.
Is that not what it is?
I don't think
I think
there's
that's a separate bath. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a shower.
There's a shower.
Yeah, is the bath not back there? Okay, well, I
Wait,
can
what?
barely see. So looked that way to me. Is that just like a bench? Oh, they got billiards.
This is it staged for sale.
Yeah, it looks really, really nice staged.
So they're living on, from the outside, this picture perfect life. What did he buy it for?
That would've- That would have been him, that 10/28/2016 one. It would have been like one mil.
But when did he buy it?
He bought it in, well, no, actually, it said 2017 was when he bought it.
Yeah, I don't have it.
All the newspapers said $1 million is how much he bought it for.
Yeah,
Which I'm honestly surprised it's not more.
Yeah.
I guess that just must be where they were in Texas. Because, yeah, that $1 million. I mean, here in Colorado, there's no way.
Guess it just depends on the location.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
it depends
also-
on how
it's
far
been a
out
long
of civilization
time.
you
The
are.
market's changed a lot since
Yeah.
then, too, but pretty wild.
But after he moved into this beautiful new house, he offered for Nichol, Alexa, and London to move out of their apartment and move in with him. Because again, the house has plenty of space and the girls could each have their own bedrooms with 2 more to spare. And Nicole's oldest, Skylar, just in case you're wondering, was in his 20s at this point, so he was out living on his own.
So Vanessa said of this decision to move in with Charlie, quote, "I think more than anything, she was looking to have some stability, a stable relationship, something long-term. And those are the things that you look for as you grow older." Charlie's mother, Cynthia, said, quote, "We let her in our hearts and our home." So Nichol and her children often spent time with Charlie's parents over the holidays and also at Bible studies. And as an avid hunter, Charlie wanted Nichol to join him on hunting trips. So he trained her with firearms, including a handgun that he kept unsecured and stored in a bedside table. And Nicole's daughters seemed to enjoy living at the Anaqua Springs home. I mean, how could you not enjoy living there? It was pretty nice. And London's father, Hector, said that she never complained about Charlie or the living situation. She only ever asked why Nichol and Charlie took weekend trips without her and wished that she could go with them. And from what we understand, it seemed like they were going on these weekend trips like all the time.
Right. And to Nicole's credit, that is when her daughters were being cared for by their fathers. So it wasn't like she was just leaving them high and dry. However, that's like London would ask Hector, like, why can't I go with mom? Why is she going without me? And so it still is a little sad.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it being sad for her, for sure. But it's interesting to me that they went on these weekend trips so often. Like it's really is the honeymoon stage. And he is really trying to woo her and impress her by constantly taking her off on these romantic trips, which does sound pretty nice, not gonna lie. But for Hector's part, he thought that it was strange that he himself never really spoke to Charlie aside from their first introduction. It seemed like Charlie would be out of the house or just straight up avoid him when he came to pick up London. However, since London never mentioned anything bad about Charlie and seemed to be pretty happy being there, Hector never brought this up with Nichol and just wanted to keep the peace for everyone.
Which I don't blame him.
I don't either.
If she's not complaining about him and there doesn't seem to be an apparent issue, why try to start something? Yeah. You just want it to be, you want her to be safe. You want her to be in a good environment. Although I'm sure Hector is nervous, right? You're staying in this guy's house. You don't know this guy. You don't know what's in his house. And so I can imagine that would probably have been pretty nerve-wracking. But obviously he trusts Nichol, keep their daughter safe. But sure, it was difficult,
Yeah. And at this point, Alexa was a popular, thriving high schooler. She was a cheerleader. She had a boyfriend and was really involved in the Kingsborough Ridge Baptist Church, where she participated in the puppet ministry and also volunteered at the nursery. After graduation, Alexa planned to enroll at Texas A&M University with the ultimate goal of becoming an obstetrician. So very big dreams for herself.
Nicole's youngest, London, stayed with her and Charlie Monday through Thursday morning and with her father, Hector, for the rest of the week. London loved animals, especially monkeys, and would spend her free time singing, painting, and performing in her school's theater group. She dreamed of auditioning for America's Got Talent and wanted to be famous.
I love this picture of her.
Very cute.
I'm assuming this was something from theater potentially, or was this
Could be a studio as well.
Or just like a studio,
like a photo shoot or something, yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful with the wings. Oh my God.
Even though Nichol didn't have to worry about the bills or groceries, she still worked tirelessly as a hairdresser during the day as she felt it was important that she could still independently support her family.
Which is so respectable that, she absolutely could have just stopped working, but she didn't.
Yeah, well, she's clearly passionate about what she did for a living and, was friends with her business partner and the people at the salon. And it was also just probably a nice escape, to get out of the house.
But I think, and of course, we don't actually know what her thought process was, but I'm sure part of it too was because she's had so many relationships that haven't worked out in the past that she never wanted to get too comfortable or rely on a man at the end of the day.
To those on the outside, Nichol and Charlie's relationship seemed like a, quote, romance novel. But to those close to Nichol, there were signs that Charlie wasn't the man he presented himself as. One day in May 2017, Nichol showed up to a photo shoot with Kiva Cole with a bruised eye. She immediately began applying makeup to the injury to try and cover it up. Vanessa tried to ask her about it, but Nichol would only say that she and Charlie argued a bit and insisted that, quote, she was fine.
Then in January of 2018, Vanessa and Nichol were having a girls' night and they ended up deciding to go to a Spurs game. And while they were driving to the arena, Charlie called Nichol and asked to speak with Vanessa. And according to Vanessa, Charlie said, quote, You're really lucky that I'm letting her go with you. I wouldn't trust you. Like, how do you even respond to that? And then Vanessa said she just kind of played along with the call because, quote, I was just glad to have my friend there. However, Vanessa did note that Nichol was humiliated by the call, as anyone would be. And then after the game, Nichol and Vanessa went to a music club called Jazz Texas. They ordered a drink and sat down. However, Charlie started to call Nichole's phone repeatedly. And according to Vanessa, the more Charlie called, the more upset Nichol became. Vanessa said, quote, he knew that her location had changed and he wanted her home right now. Eventually, Nichol answered the phone and decided to leave. Vanessa stopped Nichol before she left and said, quote, you know this is emotional abuse. He is controlling everything you're doing. You know this, right? And Nichol said that she was very concerned because Charlie was blowing up her phone and needed to go. And Nichol didn't even finish her drink.
In the summer of 2018, Vanessa visited Charlie's house to spend time with Nichol for the first and only time. She said, quote, I think it was there that I got a sense of how the lay of the land was. He dictated the rules, and I was very uncomfortable. At one point, Vanessa and Nichol were in the backyard hot tub, and then Charlie came outside. He was visibly upset because someone had dropped a pepperoni on the floor. He said it must have been one of her daughters and ordered Nichol to get out of the hot tub, come inside to pick it up.
It's such a red flag. And it reminds me, so when I was growing up, there was this guy in our neighborhood, and he moved in probably when I was in middle school into high school. And so I was babysitting kids in the neighborhood, and he was such a freak, dude. I have a lot of stories about this man, but one of the things that really always stood out to me about him is that whenever kids would come over and play at their house and leave any type of trash, like wrappers or anything, he would gather up everyone's trash, like figure out which kid it belonged to and go and put it in their mailbox. And all our neighbors knew about this, that it was this really weird guy. And I think that just shows so much about someone's character when they're that worried about children's trash. Like if you have a kid at your house, normally you just pick up after them. Like any normal person would have just been like, oh, a kid dropped a pepperoni. Let me take 1 second and pick it up. But he had to go and make a big scene out of it. But anyway, this story is interesting because I found out actually pretty recently that this guy ended up being arrested for domestic violence. And while he was in jail, he tried to do a murder for hire plot, like tried to hire someone to go and kill the wife while he was in jail.
His wife?
Yes.
Dude.
That's the trash dude.
Wow.
And like hearing it wasn't...
kids.
Huh?
So he has kids.
Yeah.
You guys were at.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have custody of them now. Now he's in jail for a lot longer because of
yeah.
that. And I don't know all the full details about it. My dad was just telling us about it over the weekend. And I had heard it like a couple years ago. Someone else told me about it. But just, I went back to those trash moments. And it's like, it's little things like that about someone's character that can tell you a whole lot sometimes, but a lot of the time.
At first glance, you might be like, well, maybe he's just a neat freak or something. But it's the going and getting Nichol, getting her out of the hot tub with her friend to then come in and pick up a slice of pepperoni.
You can be a neat freak and it's his house, but just pick it up, dude.
It'd be one thing if it was like they had a food fight or something or made a giant meal and just walked off and left a bunch of crap everywhere. I'd be like, hey, can you guys, maybe help with this or something? Mm-hmm. But like that, that's extreme.
Yeah. Of course, it's good, like, development for your children to clean up after themselves, but a piece of pepperoni, I'm sure it was an accident. It's just what a weird thing to make a scene of, especially when Vanessa is there too, her friend, to embarrass her like that. You need to get out of the hot tub now and go pick up a pepperoni.
Well, that's just also embarrassing for you in front of Vanessa. You know what I mean? Yes. I wouldn't do that because she's clearly going to be like, what the fuck is up with this dude?
Dude, he's set off over a piece of pepperoni on the floor. I don't know.
What's happening when people aren't there?
Exactly. Right.
I think it's... I believe the kids were with their dads at this point, which is why Vanessa came over to kind of hang out. So it's even stranger to me then, because like you mentioned, it's good to tell your kids like, hey, pick up for yourselves, but there would have been no opportunity for that. This. Like there's no learning moment here with this pepperoni. It's just Charlie wanted to make a scene.
So even though the kids were gone, he's thinking the pepperoni's been there since they left?
Right.
But just
pick up the pepperoni.
What a freak.
Yeah.
Well, then later on during the same day, he gets upset again because the house's sound system didn't work. And once again, he blamed her daughters, which just makes the whole experience uncomfortable for Vanessa and Nichol, of course. And it's just like definitely a topic of conversation, as a friend being like, this is really weird behavior. Does he do this a lot? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And Vanessa's takeaway was that she started realizing that there's definitely a pattern in the home. Something would be slightly wrong. Charlie would then blame Nichole's daughter, and Nichol would be forced to fix it. After 2 hours of being there, Vanessa was so uncomfortable that she requested to leave. And on the way out, she told Nichol she didn't like him and said, quote, "What are you doing?" Vanessa also told Nichol that it seemed like she was a guest in the house, and Nichol agreed. And she said, quote, "I am a guest in this house. This is Charlie's home. This is not my home," which also says a lot. Nichol tried to assure Vanessa that everything was okay and that she shouldn't worry. Vanessa said that this was the only time that she went to the house and never cared to return because the whole experience was just so uncomfortable and awkward.
So as the relationship continued, Vanessa reported that Nichol just seemed more withdrawn and quiet. She used to be very social and loved meeting new people, but it seemed like she spent all of her time now with Charlie and only left the house when she had to work or when he allowed her to. In the early days in the relationship, those close to Nichol noticed that something was wrong with Charlie's treatment of her. Monica Patel actually remembered a visit that Nichol made to her Galveston home in July of 2017. Charlie and Nichol celebrated their first anniversary at an upscale Galveston hotel. However, upon arriving, the two began arguing over an unknown issue. Eventually, the argument became so disruptive that Charlie was forced to leave the hotel. Charlie then argued with hotel staff who escorted him to their room and forced him to pack up all of his shit. And, this seems oddly similar to the incident earlier with Charlie's ex-girlfriend. However, Charlie didn't just pack up his belongings. He also packed up all of Nichole's things, leaving her stranded in an unfamiliar city without her cell phone.
That's when Nichol took a taxi to Monica's house, her only friend in the area. And according to Monica, they talked for 17 hours straight about the relationship. Monica said, quote, "She told me that they've had lots of fights and this time that she was done because he was really embarrassing and he left her in a whole different city. He left her stranded." Monica said that Nichol was shaking and crying, and at the end of their conversation, Nichol said that she would leave him. The next day, Nichol took a flight home to San Antonio. However, Monica learned from mutual friends that she had gotten back together with Charlie. Monica said, quote, "You can't help but feel like you just wasted your time, like you were speaking to a wall or something. And I hate to say it like that, but I was drained. I was emotionally drained with her. I stayed up the whole night. I was crying. I was horrified with her for 17 hours. When she returned home, Nichol texted Monica to thank her for her help. Monica told her to reach out again if she needed anything. And according to Monica, they never spoke again. It's important to note that while Nichole's friends say the relationship was extremely toxic, and I think most of us would probably agree that we believe them, those close to Charlie did not see the relationship in that same light.
Now, Charlie's mother, Cynthia, said that Charlie was a good-hearted man and nothing like the person depicted by Nichole's friends. She said, quote, "He loved those girls and he loved Nichol." Did they have problems? Absolutely. Who doesn't? And one of Charlie's friends, Justin Davis, said, quote, "If Charlie dated this woman for 3 years and allowed her kids to live in the house with him, I know Charlie would absolutely adore and love those kids." Really, how would you know that?
I also think, like we were talking before this, it seems to me just the way that this friend Justin phrased it is like, if Charlie dated this woman, not Nichol, it doesn't sound like he ever met Nichol. It doesn't sound like he was probably that close with Charlie during this period. So I think just as much as like we can't see Nichole's friend stories as the whole picture, we certainly can't take Justin's word for it or even Cynthia's word for it.
Oh, I completely agree. And of course they're going to want to defend him.
Right.
But I think even for him to say dated this woman is so disrespectful considering what he knows at that point and what ends up happening. Court records show that authorities visited the Anaqua Springs residence 4 times in 2018, and 3 of those visits were attempts to serve court papers, and the 4th was to document a reported theft. No more information is available about these incidents. Now, no matter the truth about their relationship, Nichol was trying to move out of the Anaqua Springs home at least. On December 31st, 2018, Nichol had toured a luxury apartment complex in Fredericksburg, and it's called the Grand at the Dominion. Then on January 9th, 2019, Nichol received an email from the apartment complex saying that the 3-bedroom floor plan, quote, that you loved, was available for her budget and her time frame.
That same night, Hector spoke on the phone with Nichol around 9 p.m. This wasn't unusual, as Hector usually called Nichol every night to arrange childcare and to talk with London for a little while. On top of that, they wanted to talk about allowing London, who was only 10 years old at this time, to audition for America's Got Talent the following day. They ultimately decided against it, and then Hector spoke on the phone with London, and he said, quote, "London was just being London." Nichol spoke to several people that night, including her friend Vanessa and a woman named Bethany, whom she worked with at the salon. The next day, Nichol confirmed an appointment with a client at the salon, and nobody said anything seemed off in the house, like as far as the background noise goes. Nichol seemed normal and sober, and the girls could be heard talking normally in the background. But later that night, Charlie left the house. According to him, he and Nichol had gotten into a big fight. While it's unknown what the fight was about, he left the house at 10 p.m. Some outlets reported that he spent the night at a friend's house, but most agreed that he likely stayed with an unnamed relative. He tried to text and call Nichol and the girls throughout the night. At one point, someone using Alexa's phone said, quote, "Are you here? I think she's talking to herself," followed by a frightened emoji. Charlie also contacted Nichole's brother, Justin, saying he was worried about her and the girls. And it's important to note that while Charlie was worried about their safety, he did not alert the authorities nor return to the house at night, which I find very, very strange. Because, I mean, if you're that concerned that you're going through all these steps here to contact people and you're sending multiple texts, why would you not just come back to the house? Especially if you get a text that says she's talking to herself.
Right.
Frightened emoji. Isn't it time to come back to the house and make sure everything's okay?
Right.
Or send help?
Yeah. No, apparently not. So then at around 11 p.m., there were 5 calls made from Nichole's phone. The first was made to Charlie's mother, Cynthia, although she did not pick up. The next 4 were made to 911. However, only one of those 4 calls actually connected. However, the call wasn't long enough for dispatchers to determine their location, and on top of that, they never called back. The following day, January 10th, Charlie texted Nichole's brother Justin around 7:32 a.m. and asked if he had heard from Nichol or needed to call the police. Then, a little after 9 a.m., Charlie called 911 from the house in Anaqua Springs. He reported that Nichol, 37, Alexa, 16, and London, 10, were all dead from apparent gunshot wounds on the second floor of the house. And on the call, Charlie said that Nichol had committed. He actually said that. And in the responding officer's report, one of the pieces of documentation that has been made public surrounding the case, law enforcement described Charlie as, quote, hysterical, crying on the front lawn. However, they did note that while he was crying, there were no tears on his face, which is interesting that they even thought to make that note.
Well, clearly they thought it was odd. They're like, this guy's hysterical and crying, but there's no tears.
Which I was kind of thinking about that. I don't think, obviously, that's not like evidence of anything. And
right.
It's strange, but I feel like I've experienced that too, where I'm kind of...
If you're in a state of complete shock and panic, sometimes you're not going to just start physically crying tears.
Yeah,
you know?
Like, this is so random, but I remember when our daughter was born, I was obviously in shock, like right after she came out, and I remembered crying, but then I saw pictures and video of myself, and there were no tears. So I don't know. I guess that doesn't really tell us that much, but it is interesting that officers even thought to note that down. So anyway, when officers discovered the bodies of Nichol and the 2 girls, they noticed that they were cold and rigid to the touch, and they were likely killed the night before, though no time of death was ever publicly released.
The officers also noted that all 3 were lying close together in the second floor hallway. A handgun was found closest to Nichol. Nichol and Alexa had suffered a single gunshot wound to the head, while London had been shot in the head and neck. They located Nichole's phone, which had a new message from her coworker Bethany that said, quote, "Hey girl, your client's here." After officers made their initial pass on the scene, they found Charlie outside hugging an unnamed person. We don't know who this was. Maybe it was the relative from the night before. But then police took Charlie to a patrol car to get his initial story and a statement from him. Then they collected his cell phone before they took him to the station for further questioning. And we have no idea what that looked like, what questions were asked, how long that went on for at all. There's just nothing. Nothing's been released. But that same day, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar gave his first interview on the case, and while he didn't name any persons of interest, he almost randomly stated that an unknown assailant could exist. While the Sheriff's Department has released very little of their investigation to the public, this would not be the first time that Sheriff Salazar said something to the public that threw suspicion away from Charlie. although he has expressed multiple times that Charlie, along with unknown others, were persons of interest in this case. But now we're going to show you some clips from the various interviews with various people associated with the case, but especially of Sheriff Salazar. So here's the first minute of the very, very first initial press conference. As you'll see, it's very thrown together. This is literally filmed on a phone. This was posted to the sheriff's Facebook page. And it's a whole 7 minutes. We'll play about the first minute or so, but this is like right after he gets there.
Deceased individuals inside of a house. It appears that there's 4 residents in this house that we know of. This morning, one of the residents, a male that had stayed outside the house last night, is the information we have. He came home this morning to find the other 3 residents deceased. It appears that all 3 are deceased due to gunshot wounds to the upper parts of their body. The 3 decedents are female. 2 of them are pretty young, believed to be in their teens, and then the third is a woman believed to be in her 30s. Beyond that, we couldn't speculate as to cause of death at this point. It's just too early to tell.
Is this considered a murder?
We do believe at this point that at least 2 of them appear to be murders. Of course, the medical examiner will make that final determination. It's just too early to tell on the third person if that is a murder. Or we'll let the medical examiner take a look at it. What I can tell you is that the BCSO CSI unit is here. We have our mobile crime lab out on scene, and we're being meticulous about how this scene is processed for certain. Certainly homicide is also speaking to the male occupant of the residence, and we're hoping that as this investigation unfolds, it'll be able to shed more light on not only what was going on before last night, but also what may have happened this morning.
Quick, I mean, again, he didn't confirm it was a murder, but it is interesting that he kind of gave credence to that so early on, especially with what he ended up saying.
Especially because the victims haven't even been officially identified yet. It just seems so irresponsible to throw something like that out there so early on.
Well, and just so, again, later on, I don't know if it's in that exact clip, but that same day he said, like, and it could have been a random person. Like, it's, he just kind of throws shit out there without telling us why he's saying any of that. And the probability is that he's saying it based on nothing, frankly. Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that early on for sure, probably based off of nothing. So while Nichol and Alexa were quickly identified using their fingerprints, London was too young, only 10 years old, to have had her fingerprints anywhere on record. So they eventually had to identify her using her dental records. And 4 days after their deaths, the medical examiner released their findings. They stated that the deaths of Alexa and London were the results of homicide, while Nichole's death was a However, their report did not include the toxicology report or results from a potential gunshot residue test that placed the gun in Nichole's hand at the time of their deaths. However, despite the medical examiner ruling the situation a murder, Sheriff Salazar disagreed. He said that he was unwilling to close the investigation until more persons of interest were spoken to and more evidence was collected. Here's Alexa's father, Carlos, saying how he felt about Nichol as a mother and if she could have done this.
Carlos Montez is the father of 16-year-old Alexa and used to be married to her mom, 37-year-old Nichol Olsen.
Even to this day, our relationship as ex-spouses was great. We never argued or fought over anything when it came to Alexa.
He is in disbelief they are gone, including Olsen's younger daughter, 10-year-old London. Montez says Olsen was a good mother.
I never doubted her choices as a mother. She always made great decisions.
Montez was among several speakers tonight who not only shared their memories, but made it clear how they feel about the investigation.
We all have our suspicions and our suspects. I'm not going to fully blatantly outright say what it is that I think.
The 3 were found dead in this luxurious home by Nichole's current boyfriend. The medical examiner ruled the mother's death as a and the daughter's deaths as homicides.
But I can know and say that Nichol could not have done this, and that the home that she was living in, we just feel that it wasn't a great place for our children to have been loved.
I think something that jumped out to me in that interview with Carlos was wanting the truth to come out here. Like that's the issue, because the medical examiner rules that this was a yet what is that based off of? Like, I'm sure everybody wants them to be able to prove that, right? Prove that to us, because by all accounts, they just don't believe that Nichol would have been capable of doing something like this. Like, or if she was, then what led up to that? You know, was there some type of substance? Like what actually, you know, create the events, the layout of the events that happened to help explain, you know, this tragedy. And I think that's ultimately what the family's looking for, is what is the truth? How did this happen? Like, how do you guys think it happened based on what evidence? And the fact that that's never been provided to this day is insane to me, because if it is a clear-cut murder, you would think the authorities would want to be transparent about that, especially if the family is asking about this and asking for further clarification on this. And to not give them that, that's very weird to me. There's just something off about that, because if you look, there's, you know, this is an unfortunate thing that happens, you know, more often than you would think across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, it's a very, you know, very clear thing based on evidence and
or events leading up
to it. And in stories that I've seen, there's more transparency around what happened, what the evidence collected. I mean, Sheriff Salazar's over here like, yeah, we got our crime scene investigators up there. We're searching the house. We're doing fingerprinting. We're doing all of this investigating. And yet, what's the conclusions of that?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you come out and say, well, we found gunshot residue on Nichol's hands.
That's not enough.
The weapon was the boyfriend's gun that was unsecured in the home. That was you. Like, none of that. There's just no information whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And that they're still investigating, which makes you think, well, gosh, if there's not clear evidence that points to then why is the medical examiner ruling it that way? You know, as we know from other cases, once the medical examiner goes one way, it causes the police to go, okay, well, the medical examiner said it's this, despite maybe what we're seeing over here, but because the medical examiner went that way and doesn't rule it as homicide, then our investigation basically stops.
Yeah.
Right?
When medical examiners are proven to be wrong and sometimes retract their original findings years later. And that happens much more often than you would think.
So why is the medical examiner not clarifying why? Like, to just be, what I think is going on here is there's probably some assumptions going on, as we've seen in cases like this before, where they're like, well, this is very clear cut because a gun was found next to her. She has a gunshot wound to the head. There you go. Put two and two together, and the girls are laying right next to her.
But that's like the classic setup.
But it's like,
you know, you see that all the time in real life, but also in movies and TV shows. I mean, everyone knows that it can be staged that way. And so why would you jump to that conclusion so quickly?
How do you know it wasn't a staged scene?
Right.
Where's I feel like you need to be able to prove that this wasn't a stage scene before you just immediately go to that this was, especially with the circumstances and the fact that you have multiple victims here. You would think you would be a little bit more careful with that. And so I think there's that classic, well, the medical examiner said this, so therefore we're doing this now.
Also, I do wonder what hasn't been released as far as what Charlie was telling them. Feeding them about events leading up to it, feeding them about
what's this big
things
fight
that she was saying, you know, maybe even just making up ways that she was acting that would point to that, and has like clouded their judgment completely, if not just.
Well, I also go to time of death. What was the time of death? Because they go in, they're rigid, they're likely already in rigor mortis and all of the postmortem phases the body starts going into.
They were.
Yeah, right. So that tells you they could have been killed even earlier that prior night than expected. So who's to say that a big fight broke out and Charlie does something to them and then takes off and then plays it off of like, oh, I came back this morning. How come you haven't cleared that up yet?
Mm-hmm. Because that information came from them about them being in rigor and that it probably happened the night before.
So explain that then.
Right. That's why it's so frustrating and confusing.
And I think that's why, the family is like, what the hell? None of this isn't adding up.
Mm-mm.
What time did they actually die then? And how does that line up with Charlie's timeline and the version of events that he's giving law enforcement? Because it's just something weird doesn't make sense here. Based on what time he said he left, which they should be able to verify via the gate and the vehicle that he left in. So,
and even if they are able to verify that he wasn't home when they believe it took place, that doesn't mean that he didn't orchestrate this.
Right, exactly. It doesn't mean that somebody else associated with him wasn't involved.
I also think, like, just in terms of stuff that he's feeding to them, of course, we don't know what he was saying in the actual interviews, but we do know in the first 911 call, he immediately said that Nichol had committed.
Yep.
So he's already planted that there. And, you know, again, maybe Charlie's a totally innocent man, whatever.
Could be. Yeah.
But the fact that he immediately jumps to that, I don't know if I saw my loved one and her daughters dead, that I would immediately jump.
That's one of the things that I find is so weird. Like, wouldn't you be, oh my God, they're dead. Something happened. Is someone in the house? What's going on? And the fact that he immediately jumped to that conclusion is it's very odd to me.
Major red flag. I completely agree. Like, that wouldn't even be on your mind to even say that. And he said that on the call.
On the 911 call.
Like, that would be, to be laying the scene of what you think happened on that call, no one would even be thinking that way, right? Like, when you walk into a scene like that, the last thing on your mind is going to be like, let me tell them exactly what occurred here, in my opinion.
Especially when there's multiple people at the scene.
Especially children.
Right.
You'd think you'd be in such a panic that the last thing you would think to do is come up with your own conclusion of what occurred. So he's, I don't know, in my opinion, innocent until proven guilty, but I think that he's planting these ideas from the jump. And if he's saying that on the call, what has he said since?
And guess what? We've definitely seen that before.
Yep.
Happens a lot where whoever the perpetrator is, they call 911 and start planting seeds there.
Running
so that law enforcement's, because they know dispatch is writing notes for law enforcement as they're driving to the scene.
Yep.
They're dropping those notes to the cops. So the cops are already getting fed, okay, I'm showing up to a murder scene, most likely. And so they're going to go in with that. And then obviously you would hope that detectives and, you know, crime scene investigators would be able to come in and be like, start actually putting the pieces together. But you see it so often where that, you know, whatever's the initial sort of narrative, that's sort of the one they latch on to. Again, I mean, we just don't know what's been discussed with law enforcement. And maybe, and this is the thing too, because I think, and I'm hoping that there's more to this investigation than we know. And there's good reason for why they're not releasing a lot of this stuff, because maybe they are building a case against somebody and they feel like they don't have enough to pursue charges yet. And therefore they're kind of in this waiting stage where they're trying to get a little bit more information and whatnot. I'm hoping that's the case. Is that likely? I don't know, but
is that what your gut tells you?
Probably not. No, just based on the fact that it's been years now.
So a warrant was issued in the days after the murder to obtain all of the data from an unnamed person's phone and security from the Anaqua Springs gate to verify Charlie's story. Neither of the findings from either of these warrants were ever made public to this day. And when asked if Sheriff Salazar had spoken to all persons of interest in the case, he responded, quote, "Not all persons of interest have spoken to us every time that we've wanted them to. Some of them have obtained attorneys, and the attorneys are, quite frankly, doing what attorneys do and not allowing us to talk to people, not allowing us to get evidence in the case. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that I can infer guilt from that. It just says that I'm not able to always talk to all persons of interest in this case." A lot of excuses.
It's just like, you're a cop. You're a fucking cop. Like, sign a warrant, issue a warrant, issue a subpoena. Like, there's things you can do. You're the only one who can do anything to talk to these people.
Especially with how much time has passed.
Right.
Which when was that quote?
I believe that quote came before the 2021 deadline.
Okay. So yeah, it's been.
Yeah, it's the things like this that he says where I'm like, you know, and we'll talk about it more when we get to the theories, where I'm like, well, maybe things do check out with Charlie as far as like his story goes and his timeline, but there's other things that don't make sense and potentially kind of going back to somebody else is involved and they just don't know who it is yet. And so I think he's kind of just walking this line where he's trying not to say too much, but also say the right things, and appear like he's, following the laws and, rules, so to speak. Sounds like a lot of PR talk, but
yeah, I mean, I hope that's the case. I hope they have not just completely focused in on murder, because to me, I don't believe that for a second. Like, there's no part of me that believes that that's what happened. I do not. I don't know Nichol, obviously, but all I can go off of is what, her family and friends have said. I guess you can never really know when someone's. That's always something that, that's a really hard conversation to have in general. Yeah, someone that could be on the outside completely happy and fine could still commit. But I just don't believe that this mother would murder her 2 beautiful daughters in such a brutal way. I find that like almost impossible to believe.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. In my mind, if that was a situation that unfolded, there likely would have been other factors, I think, that would have played into that, whether it be something that pops up on the toxicology report, something like that. So if all evidence points towards that, why not just be completely transparent about that
and show us that evidence
and tell the family the truth?
Passed?
Like, hey guys, according to the autopsy, according to the toxicology reports, this is what we think happened based on XYZ, and give it to them, which tells me that likely there's no evidence to support that. So they're like, shit, well, we still don't know what the hell happened here. The medical examiner is pointing to, but now that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense either, but that's all he can go off of. But we're missing something because, there's a lot of different scenarios that could have played out here. And as you can imagine, her family and friends are completely frustrated with this situation and pissed off, quite frankly, at where it's gone. And this is so many families across the country who deal with this, where they're getting told that this is what happened, but yet they're not given any sort of evidence to back it up, especially when they have all this other evidence that they've also firsthand witnessed from this individual, and based on encounters with him and different things that Nichol has told them. The fact that they know Nichol way more, have known her whole life, as opposed to, law enforcement's just getting, information on her as this is unfolding. And there's just no progress being made. And none of them believe that Nichol could have killed her daughters.
Yeah.
They also can't understand why the Bexar County Sheriff's Department couldn't make a ruling or release more evidence. The families ended up getting involved with Project Absentis, a nonprofit run by ex-law enforcement who worked to bridge the gap between families and officers investigating their cases. And according to ex-FBI agent Tuleta Copeland, a member of Project Absentis, she said, quote, "In my professional opinion, based on the interviews I've conducted by myself, I can't tell you passionately enough that Nichol, in my opinion, is not a murderer. I will go on record saying that she is not a murderer." Project Absentis advocated for the use of geofencing to investigate this case, which this would allow the officers to see whose phones were in the house at any given time, what apps were accessed, and when. This could provide more information on Charlie's story and see if a random assailant was even possible. Sheriff Salazar said, quote, "We'd have to go to the DA's office and show them that probable cause exists. However, the DA's office said that they never issued the geofencing warrant because they were still waiting on the, quote, completed file from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office." So what the hell? It sounds like they're willing to entertain it or push it through, but yet they're waiting on the sheriff's office, and for some reason, Sheriff Salazar is not completing that paperwork to take a look at geofencing, because that seems like a really great way
why wouldn't he
to figure out what devices are actually there.
Mm-hmm. I don't get it, especially because this is such a high-profile case in the community. So many people are demanding answers. Why would he not at least appease them a bit by doing some of these things? Like, just to not sign off on paperwork? Something is weird.
Well, what's even worse is that Sheriff Salazar refused to make a ruling after the medical examiner's findings. He doesn't seem to have made any additional attempts to investigate the case, or at least any attempts that are publicly available. Because again, there's nothing like this case after first 2, maybe 3 years. There's been absolutely like no communication about this case from the sheriff's office, updates of any kind. And so it seems like it's just, with the cold case unit pretty much at this point, which is weird considering the medical examiner's findings. So why aren't we trying to put the two and two together and officially release the findings and close the case. And that's not happening.
I believe there were only 4 or 5 additional warrants issued after the first investigation.
What the hell?
Which is crazy. And again, we don't know what these warrants were. We know that some unnamed person, probably Charlie, his phone was one of the warrants, was to search that, and then an additional warrant to look at the surveillance footage from the gate. But aside from that, there's 2 or 3 warrants that we don't know what they were looking for, and we don't know what they found. And also that's like an insanely small number of things to even look for in the first place for a case of this magnitude, in my opinion.
Yeah, 3 victims, and like I said, has as high profile as it is. It's bizarre. So in 2020, frustrated by the lack of progress in the case, both Hector and Carlos actually ended up filing their own separate lawsuits against Charlie. And as a reminder, they are the fathers of Nicole's 2 children. And they filed lawsuits against Charlie Wheeler for gross negligence and wrongful death in willingly leaving Nicole home alone, where she had easy access to unsecured firearms when he was worried about her mental state. While previous to this, both men maintained that Nichol couldn't have killed the girls. They may have filed the lawsuits to bring forward new information through deliberation that police either didn't make available or hadn't investigated. And London's Aunt Emma published an op-ed in the San Antonio Express pleading for red flag laws in Texas, which would force firearms to be confiscated from the homes of people who were dealing with mental health crises or turbulent domestic issues, as was the case with Charlie and Nichol. But still, nothing more was publicly released by the sheriff's office. The families urged the Texas Rangers to get involved in the case, and the FBI actually did get involved, but nothing happened. The Bexar County Sheriff's Department was supposed to make a ruling by Christmas of 2020. However, they had released no new information in the months leading up to that. And obviously, everyone was frustrated by this, especially Hector, London's father. So he wrote a letter to Sheriff Salazar saying that he and his family would hold a vigil for London in front of his home on Thanksgiving, Sheriff's home.
So in response to this, Sheriff Salazar held a press conference in which he said he would not be, quote, bullied into making a ruling, and even suggested that Hector's paternity of London was called into question during the last phone conversation he had with Nichol, even though there's no proof of that.
That is so wildly inappropriate for him to make a statement like that.
And he would later, of course, walk back those comments, likely fearing a lawsuit from Hector. But here's some more clips of Sheriff Salazar talking about how he won't be bullied, as well as Hector's lawyer explaining why the family wants the results.
I'm sure his civil suit and monetary damages, whatever it is that he's hoping to recover, is very important to him. To me, justice on the criminal side is even more important. And so that I won't let that be compromised. And I certainly won't be bullied into rushing an investigation.
London's family doesn't care about the result. We just want to know what it is. Nobody's saying that London did anything wrong, so we don't have a dog in that hunt. They just want to know what happened because they need to move on with their lives.
Yeah, that's so offensive to make it sound like he's just selfishly wants him to focus on these personal lawsuits for him. And I truly care about justice. Yeah. And that's just, shut the fuck up.
No, they just want to know what happened. They just want to know.
Of course they do.
Because until you tell them, all the scenarios remain on the table. So it's just like, and there's just a lack of care that I feel from Sheriff Salazar.
Yeah.
And lack of sensitivity to the situation.
To have zero empathy to Hector in that statement, he lost his child in a brutal way. And to speak that way, it's offensive. It's also just so unprofessional. And God, it just pisses me off.
Well, the Christmas deadline came and went, and Salazar did not release any findings. He just sent the case back to the Criminal Investigative Division on January 4th, 2021. And the last update came in 2022 when Sheriff Salazar said that Charlie Wheeler was still a person of interest in the case. In this video, Sheriff Salazar explained why he didn't sign the final report.
Investigators at the sheriff's office sent their final report to the sheriff, but 2 years later, this is not a done deal.
At the moment that I am satisfied with all questions and I close that case and I forward it as completed, in doing that, I'm also saying, in essence, that Nichol Olsen murdered her 2 daughters. And I'm sorry, I'm not ready to label Nichol Olsen as a murderer, a double murderer of her own children with what I have in hand.
He's making it sound like, oh, that's all well and good, but tell us why you're not willing to do that yet.
Exactly. He's trying to frame himself as the hero here, really, when, dude, no.
Well, what's taking so long? What's going on? Give us something. You can't just leave everybody, especially when it's this big of a case, everybody in the dark on what's going on behind the scenes. If you strongly feel like she didn't do this, it's just like, what's going on here? Because you have your medical examiner saying it's and then you guys are basically over here being like, well, we're not ready to accept that conclusion here. So then why didn't the medical examiner then rule that undetermined or rule that, there's lots of other statuses they could have put that in, and yet they put it in that. So what's going on? Why is there this disconnect? And maybe there's a cover up of incompetence or something going on that he's trying to just delay. Who knows? Or maybe there is something that they're trying to chase down and investigate, or maybe they're close to something. But it's like, you can give you were so sort of happy-go-lucky there at the beginning to give out information and everything, and all of a sudden it just ceases and stops, and there's nothing coming out. And so give at least the family something to go off of so that they know that you're not sitting there doing nothing and you're just delaying closing this case or releasing the findings, and tell them, like, hey guys, we're chasing down some more leads. We think that there could be more to this than what we originally thought. So bear with us while we try to figure this out. But to just nothing, no communication, and then to go on public TV and say shit like this is just rude and offensive. And I don't blame them for filing lawsuits, because it's like,
what else can they do?
Yeah, you can't do anything. And that's the most frustrating thing about it, other than try to sue. But, well, here's Sheriff Salazar again, further explaining his reasoning behind not signing the report.
I'm just not ready to say that Nichol murdered those little girls. I'm just not.
The ruling even has investigators torn.
I'm just not satisfied yet that we're ready to close that book.
Court records show 10 search warrants have been signed in this case. According to an affidavit to search AT&T and Sprint cell phone data, investigators say the crime scene was, quote, very complex, and that there was possible evidence, quote, the deaths were not necessarily a murder and possibly a triple murder.
What's the priority level of this case?
It's a high priority. It's a high priority. To me, we may reach the point where, you know what, it just looks like a on her part. But again, to me, that it's a whole other leap to call her a murderer. I'm just not there yet. I'm not willing to make that leap without something more.
Nichole's supporters say the devoted mother would never hurt her children.
I absolutely refuse to believe that she could have had any hand in hurting her own daughters.
There's no way she could have done this, no matter what she was going through, no matter what she was facing.
Right now, the sheriff says there are no suspects.
Is Charles Wheeler still considered a person of interest?
I think everybody in this that's associated with Nichol and these little girls is still considered a person of interest.
Who are these other persons of interest?
Yeah.
Like, literally, if there's so many, you're only saying Charlie by name.
I know, but at this point in time, to have no other names when you keep dropping that.
Yeah, I've never seen something like this. It's just bizarre. In saying this seems very complex, and so, but then the medical examiner, just go back to the medical examiner, like, well, did they jump the gun on that?
I mean, wouldn't be the first time.
I will say 4 days is a pretty quick turnaround for a full report.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, maybe because, like, I mean, in my personal opinion, obviously, I think if Charlie didn't do it, I think he paid someone to do it, or like got someone else involved. And maybe that's why he's saying there's other person of interest and it's complicated. And maybe he really can't say anything because it would give it, would out their investigation to someone else that they're considering. Maybe there's a whole murder for hire plot going on or something. I don't know.
Well, they should have slowed the roll there at the beginning then. They shouldn't have gone with gone the way that they did, because they already set the narrative out there.
Right.
And so you've already got everybody, riled up about this. So a little too late for that. So why don't you're now going to have to backtrack, and you're going to have to try to fix this. And he's just Stonewall. He's just like, well, we're still working on it. I don't know. He doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. I'll just say that. I don't feel confident with this guy at the helm of this investigation, because it seems like he has no real idea what's going on. And maybe he's just, everything's happening behind the scenes and whatnot. But I would like to hear from the detectives that talked to Mr. Wheeler. Mm-hmm. How come he's the only guy that's out there talking about it, which is a bit strange, for the sheriff, the only person talking about this. Where's anybody else associated? What about, I don't know. This one is very, very bizarre. Investigators also purchased a burla, which identifies information stored within a car's infotainment system, including who sat in what seats based on airbag data. There's tons of sensors in cars. They can tell if a seatbelt's been plugged in or not, how fast the car was driving, and what apps were being used in the vehicle. However, we have no idea what this turned up, what vehicle it was used on. All we know is that the sheriff's department went out and bought one for this investigation, they said. But that's it. That's all we know. 3 years after the murders, the families of Alexa and London wrote to the Texas Attorney General urging that the Texas Rangers take over the case because Sheriff Salazar had, quote, dropped the ball. And they went on to say, quote, we have had no justice. We think he's just going to keep it covered up.
Yeah, they fully seem to believe that this is a cover up. I would not be shocked. Obviously, I don't know that. I am not accusing anything, but I would not be shocked.
Yeah, and the families never received a response from the AG's office. And over 6 years later, nothing has been done. You can go look it up right now. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. At this point of
just wild
recording and
no findings,
April
no signing the final report. They're just sitting on it. Sounds like it's somewhere within the sheriff's office still, likely the cold case unit. And it's like, what? So why is it already at that point? What's going on here?
God, it's maddening.
It's one of those cases where getting the public's involved with this could potentially help bust this open, and figure out potentially, maybe not. But
I don't know. It's hard to say anything.
What do we know?
We don't know anything.
Yeah. What do we know at the end of the day, I guess?
So let's talk about some of the theories, some of the possibilities of what could have happened. So the first theory, of course, is the finding that the medical examiners came to, that Nichol killed her daughters before committing herself. And without any additional evidence, it's hard for the public to see this conclusion. We don't know if she had any drugs in her system because of the toxicology. Toxicology results have never been released. We've already gone over a lot of this, but we don't know if her hands tested positive for gunshot residue. We don't even know if Charlie was even tested for it in the first place. All we know is that the three of them were found dead of gunshot wounds together and that the gun was found closest to Nichol. That's it. And while we have those texts between Charlie and Alexa's phone saying that Nichol was screaming at herself, we have no idea who was using Alexa's phone then.
Yeah, it could be somebody just using her phone. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And because the 911 dispatchers totally dropped the ball, we have no idea who called 911 4 times and Charlie's mom that night. We don't even know if the gun found at the scene was the same one that Charlie kept in their bedroom. So here's Sheriff Salazar again explaining what happened with the 911 calls.
What we found was that while we did know that there was a disconnected call, a dropped call from that phone number, we don't know where that number is calling from. So all that we know is that we have a dropped call from a cell phone number. Normal protocol is to call that number back, but if we don't know exactly where that phone is located, we don't know where to dispatch to.
But they still didn't call the number back.
Yeah, right.
Nobody called the number back.
Right.
If you got a call from 911, multiple calls.
Yeah, you would call back.
Clearly, somebody's not just calling over and over again for no reason. At least call back and double check.
Well, only one connected.
Yeah, right.
But still, you should call back. That's just standard practice, as far as I understand. But according to numerous people who spoke to Nichol that night, she seemed perfectly normal and made plans for the rest of the night. She even had plans to move out of Charlie's house. As we talked about, she was looking at that apartment. So what could have happened that would have caused her mental state to change that drastically, to not only take her own life, but to kill her daughters as well? I just don't even buy it for a second.
There's literally nothing unless there was serious substance abuse going on or something like that would have
and if that was
caused
the
a
case,
psychotic break or something.
I believe we would know about that at this point. Why would they not have just shared that? So some people online have, of course, theorized that with both of Nichol's parents passing around Christmas and New Year's, that this, was an emotionally charged time for them. But this is based on nothing beyond that. No other family member has ever reported that Nichole's mood would change during the holidays. It just kind of seems like people grasping at straws, which I don't necessarily blame them, because there's nothing here to make sense of this at all, that maybe they're trying to figure out why she would have been in this mental state so suddenly. But there's really no proof for that at all. I don't even think it's worth discussing.
I am so curious to know if crime scene investigators did any sort of crime scene reconstruction or actually tried to figure out the position that the gun went off at, the bullet trajectory, luminol. I wonder how much actual forensics were done, because I feel like the forensics in this case, as in many cases like this, will be able to tell you whether or not the way that, this was even possible in the way that they were found. You know what I mean?
Right.
And where the gunshot wounds were, how they were found next to each other, the distance that the gun was away from the body. You know what I mean? There's so many questions here in just the crime scene alone that makes you wonder. And based on where they're at right now, I think seems like maybe they are a little, this doesn't really make sense. There's something else that we're missing here, potentially. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a cover up for some other reason. But
yeah,
I don't know. I'm holding out hope that there is a good reason that they're not releasing the findings here and just closing this case out. They are holding on to something that they want to investigate further and possibly
I really
change
hope,
this investigation. But
I hope you're right.
I hope so.
But it's been so long.
I know.
I doubt. I don't know. I have my doubts.
But obviously, the other theory that I think all of us pretty much here kind of lean towards is that Charlie was the one that killed them. But again, without more information from the sheriff's department, there's not enough info there.
Yeah,
we have no idea.
100% our
allegedly,
opinion.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Because there's so many questions there. We want to know about the surveillance footage. We want to know if they was tested for gunshot residue. Obviously, DNA would be all over the house. It is his house, and they live there. So that may or may not be that helpful. But really figuring out his timeline, confirming his alibi, where was he, who was he with, what did his phone show, what's in his phone messages, where was his phone pinging from? There's just so many different things that could help clear it up. And then even in more recent interviews, he's still saying he's a person of interest. So that alone, it's to not come out and say, no, we've cleared Charlie Wheeler of any involvement with this. That hasn't happened yet. So that is interesting. And then you go back to all, the things that Vanessa witnessed, their relationship, and the fact that he has not connected with the family whatsoever since this happened. He has not reached out to either the girl's parents or fathers. He hasn't reached out to any of the family.
We look back now and we think about these things, and we say to ourselves, those should have been obvious signs to us that something wasn't right.
Just as a man, he never went up and introduced himself. They're living in my house, just as a common courtesy.
Even after the murders more than a year ago, Carlos says the man who lived with his daughter still hasn't reached out to his family.
We never got any phone calls, never got any flowers. No one ever reached out to us, and at that point it just kind of seemed more like, what is it that you're trying to avoid? Why are you trying to stay away so much?
Does that make you suspicious?
Yeah. I honestly ultimately think that he's 100% responsible for what happened that night.
And of course, I'm sure his
lawyers are telling him absolutely not. So maybe that's the reason.
Maybe.
But still, you can reach out in a way that wouldn't.
Yeah.
If you're truly, and again, I guess a lawyer is going to tell you to not do it. And
well, the lawyer can tell you.
Right.
But you can still do something. You can express, I'm just so sorry for your loss that this happened in my house. Or maybe, I guess he probably couldn't say that, but just to express any type of
send flowers,
any type of empathy, condolences to them, I think any normal person would do that. I think. I don't know.
There's just so many red flags and so many things that pop up. The fact that she was planning to move and planning to end the relationship. She also had a client coming the next day. So again, things can happen. Not saying it's not possible, but by all accounts, it seems like she was fully planning to be there the next day. Life would go on as normal the next day, and that didn't happen. So what happened here?
I think even if Charlie's story played out exactly as he said it did, like they got in an argument around 10, he left that night. He's seen on the gate security footage leaving that doesn't tell us that he didn't do it and then leave right afterwards.
Exactly.
Right,
Like, what
exactly.
is that? That shows nothing.
It
If
shows
anything,
nothing.
the forensics kind of show the opposite.
Right. And that's honestly why I think Mr. Salazar is covering it up, is because I think investigating officers, like the one piece of information they've shown is that initial officer report where it says like Charlie was crying but no tears, yada yada yada, because I think that's probably the only thing that shows that they didn't fuck up the investigation, in my opinion. I think I imagine that they probably went into there expecting to investigate a murder and they didn't do anything to look at it from another perspective.
Yep.
And so I bet they don't want to release documentation from that early on in the investigation because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's at least my theory.
No, I'm completely with you, Ian. And again, it's totally speculative and an opinion. I believe there's a cover-up going on here. For what reasons, I don't know, but this is a high-profile, highly prominent family in this area. I don't know. Something is so weird here. Like, there's just so many elements that doesn't make sense about the case and about the investigation as a whole that it leads you to think that way. And obviously, I'm not like zoned in on that completely, but that's just like what my gut tells me. Again, I have no credentials or anything like that, but I don't know. It's so strange.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how Sheriff Salazar would have handled this if it was anybody other than Nichol.
Right.
Say it was somebody who wasn't associated with the family, a Wheeler family, just a more middle-class average family here. You know what I mean? Like, I think because of who's involved with it, the media attention it's had on it, I think it is, they didn't handle it the way that they should have. And then maybe after the fact, they're like, oh shit.
Or they just don't want to admit a fuck up. Yeah.
Maybe we should have looked at this as a triple murder initially, and we didn't do all of the groundwork required. And now that is gone. And now we're just stuck. And now he doesn't want to come out and say Nichol did this, because obviously that is a horrible thing to say because it's likely not true, but also bad look for him, right? He's the sheriff and he's been the face of this, and he wants to continue to get reelected here. And so nobody's going to like that if that's what he ends up saying. So I think there's just so many elements here to it. But yeah, I mean, the other possibility too is maybe somebody hired somebody else to do this. Again, you got to go through the gated interest, but that's not going to stop somebody from going on foot. It's not like there's a wall around this.
Well, there's two different ideas here, right? Like Sheriff Salazar bringing up a random person. A random person wouldn't align
like a crime of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
But there's no other motive here. Nothing was stolen from the house, as far as we know, I guess. But you would think if that was the case, they would have at least shared that. So I don't think that makes any sense. But I definitely am.
Plenty of murder for hire cases out there.
So many.
In similar types of situations. So I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility.
And especially with Charlie, someone with money, I could see him wanting to take that route instead.
Classic, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Yeah, like she's leaving.
Or maybe she knows some stuff about him or his family. I mean, who knows?
Maybe the girls just happen to be there. I mean, this is all so speculative and just theories.
Maybe they got in a fight,
know,
or maybe what happens, maybe they had a fight and it got out of hand with her. He ended up, he, in my opinion, ended up killing Nichol, and then the girls somehow witnessed or saw what had happened, and then he then murdered them as well, and then left, and then made up this whole story and concocted it.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I mean, there's so many things.
With the information that we have available, which is not enough at all, I lean towards Charlie or someone that Charlie hired to do this.
Agreed.
But again,
agreed.
Innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Well, the home was sold in 2019. So it's been sold. Somebody else owns it now. And Charlie left. He left the area.
Now, his current whereabouts are not public. However, it's been rumored that he could be in Austin or potentially Colorado Springs, although there's really like nothing solid to back that up. So we have no idea where he is.
And we don't know if he's involved. At the end of the day, there's just too much that we don't know. I think the big thing here is pressure on law enforcement, pressure on the sheriff's department. And if there's more to investigate here, the family needs help figuring out how to do that. But I think ultimately it's just we need to get the sheriff's office to give us some information, give us an update. What's going on with this? Because family's not getting notified about it. There's no communication happening.
So in the days after the deaths of Nichol, Alexa, and London, there was an outpouring of grief from those who knew them. Alexa's high school boyfriend posted a very moving tribute to her on Twitter saying, quote, January 10th, 2019, a part of me was taken. Through thick and thin, it was us against the world. Now that I have to face this world alone, I know that you will be my guardian angel and guide me through it. Alexa Denise Montez, you will always be my forever and always. I love you. Gosh, so heartbreaking. And then Hector said that his mother, London's grandmother, still cries and whispers, quote, my baby, whenever she sees photos of London. Hector said about London, quote, to me, she was perfect. He recalled to the San Antonio Express how she would accompany 2 boys with Down syndrome to class, carrying their books and lunches. Just says so much about her. I mean, she was only 10 years old and already doing things like that. Huge heart. He said that London was, quote, my world, my best friend. Every decision I made revolved around her. Kelly Myrick, a friend and business partner of Nichol, said, quote, there will never be anyone else like her. It's ironic how she didn't like being the center of attention, yet here we are. Vanessa said, quote, she was very strong and she protected those girls with her life. Here's an Instagram post Vanessa made as a memorial to Nichol. I'm just going to read some of this. It says, it's not every day you have to say goodbye to a beautiful friend. Much too early. Bonded by motherhood, courageous personas, and our business endeavor, Nichol is one of the most loyal and loving people I have ever met. She would defend those she loved and be there in an instant if you needed her. We love you, sweet friend, and we'll miss you so much. Thank you for always having my back and allowing me to accept the fire within myself. Rest with your baby girls. Your memory and legacy will be protected here until I see you again, with a prayer emoji. Here's Skylar talking about how he's tried to move forward with his life since the death of his mom and sisters.
It's tough, but I got to keep going and do it for them.
What has helped Olsen's son move forward is the support of family and friends. Close friend and music artist Junior K just released this song titled Finally Home. He also recorded this music video as a tribute to the 3.
Love it. Honestly, I listen to it at least 3 or 4 times a day, and it's hard to, it touches my heart every single time I hear it.
The words Finally Home really do speak to Nobles.
Label on the song Finally Home just makes me know that they're in a better place. Their home is heaven to me, and that's where they are.
While the medical examiner ruled the case a murder, the Bexar County Sheriff says he is not convinced and is still investigating. Nobles has this message to law enforcement.
Just keep searching, please.
Nichol, Alexa, and London had a joint funeral service on January 25th, 2019, and hundreds of mourners came to pay their respects. Nichol and Alexa were in closed caskets in the same room, while London was actually in an open casket nearby. Her casket was lined with purple, and the word princess was inscribed on the lid. Clark High School, where Alexa attended, held a memorial for her in the weeks after her murders. Family members, students, and friends all stayed after school to give tearful remembrances of the girl that they all loved. So there was a GoFundMe in place at some point, and we contacted the GoFundMe organizer looking to recruit outside help to investigate the case. And while the page hasn't been updated in many years, we would be absolutely thrilled to be able to provide a HOPE grant to Nichol, Alexa, and London's families to help pay for private investigation fees if that's something they're still interested, or potentially help them in some other way. So we're definitely going to be trying to get in contact with them and see if we can help them through Higher Hope. And again, if you're interested in helping us fund these grants, you can go to milehighermerch.com. Is that correct? Yes.
Or you can just donate on Higher Hope.
Or yes.
Yeah,
yes,
you don't have to buy merch.
Do it that way. That's just the newest way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, every single donation we get goes directly towards helping victims of violent crime and their families. But we wanted to end off here with a beautiful song that was made by a family friend about the girls, and it's very emotional and beautifully done. There's a music video along with it with clips of them that was actually part of a promotional video for the hair salon that Nichol worked at. And if you want to see the full version, we'll also have that linked below. But we wanted to end off, leave you guys here with some of that. But until next time, keep on taking your mind a mile higher.